Many have heard of the second coming of Jesus Christ, but few know the origin of this belief or if there is tangible evidence to suggest its possibility. Personally, I remain open-minded on this topic, valuing knowledge and considering all perspectives. The myth of the second coming is particularly intriguing due to its association with the enigmatic Dark Ages, a period often debated by historians. The potential connection between these two ideas fascinates me. I've always questioned the traditional narrative of civilization's development, which portrays a flourishing ancient world followed by the abrupt darkness of the Middle Ages, culminating in the resetting of time to the year zero. The most striking example is the mysterious case of Italy's Umberto Gallery, as investigated by the explorer Frederick Dodson. Believe it or not, photographs from the 1800s show the year 890 displayed above the entrance. A century later, the marking inexplicably changes to M, indicating the year 1890. This alteration demands explanation, as it suggests our ancestors casually observed the year 890 for 1,000 years without question. A meticulous researcher dedicated extensive time to this enigma, seeking any evidence of fraud, yet his efforts only deepened the mystery. Official records on the gallery's architects are suspiciously incomplete and altered. Additionally, numerous 19th-century photographs of the square seem deliberately framed to obscure the gallery, hindering verification. Further anomalies arise in old coins. During this period, coins displayed the number 1 alongside the letter I or J. Recognized abbreviations for Jesus or Isus. A 1621 coin clearly shows the initial 1 differing from the final 1, implying the use of another symbol, signifying the year 621 after Christ. The Pultura coin distinctly separates the year 700 from the preceding symbol, suggesting its symbolic rather than numerical nature. Another penny reveals a polished I preceding the number 800. Many such examples exist, like the 696 Pultura with a distinct I and the Hibernia with a pronounced J. However, with the dawn of the 19th century, considered the onset of the modern age, the numeral 1 becomes standardized, and all indications of I or J symbolism vanish. The first letter of the year on older coins is definitely not the number 1, and here's why. On this coin, we see an interesting symbol like a fishhook. It has a hook on the left and right sides. So, everything points to some symbol and not the number 1 or 1,000 years. This coin is allegedly from 1750. This is very strange because on this coin even the last digit is not a number but a symbol. Can we somehow decipher this ancient language? Now a coin from 1706. Again a similar first symbol. It is clear that it is a letter or a symbol because this is a modern Latin capital letter I. Then a coin from 1660 and again a similar symbol that we often see. So, if we think objectively, we come to the conclusion that it cannot be the number 1. Here is the coin from 1835. That famous 19th century. Out of nowhere, the number 1 or 1,000 years finally appears. We also know what happened. Industrialization happened. Today's modern imperialistic system is slowly developing. Since then, every coin has received a clear number 1 at the beginning. Only 2 centuries ago, the number 1 at the beginning of the year never even existed. You also see this coin from the alleged year 1664. Of course, anyone who wants to be reasonable will admit that this is a mark and that it represents the number of years after the mystical symbols. When I realized this, I started researching. I was looking for old letters and symbols, to see how the evolution of numbers, letters and symbols took place over time. This is the only way you can know if someone, by replacing the old symbols with the number 1, actually inserted a significant 1,000 years into history. There are several reasons why someone would do this. The most logical reason is to distance people from faith because Jesus Christ became God himself. The teachings of Jesus did not fit into industrialization and materialism at all. The influence of Christianity at that level had to be reduced. The easiest way to stop the teachings of Christ was to convince people that Christ lived a long time ago and that it was outdated. On the signs and symbols from 1750 BC, we find the same strange symbol only reversed. Look at this picture again. Like an elongated letter with two hooks. Also on this coin, except that this symbol has a thickening at the top as well. The only thing that looks similar, in the evolution of letters in this old script, in my opinion, is this letter V in this fish. You can really see a small fish head on this coin if you look closely. This is how animators usually draw a fishbone. This is actually the sign of the fish. Many do not know that it is synonymous with Christ and the water carrier and symbolizes the fish. It is interesting that these two symbols, the symbol of the fish, and the strange one with hooks, get a new form and meaning around 1000 BC. Believe it or not, this symbol becomes the letter I, and the letters I and Y had the same root. When spelling the letter I, the sound J is pronounced at the end. J as in Jesus. The letter Y from the word year originated from the letter I as ear. So, there is no doubt that they meant the year after Jesus, or they simply wrote the year and the number of years that have passed. You can clearly see that old archaic fish sign becomes the modern Latin letter D. What is incredible is that the real letter D is the first letter of the word date, which is used throughout the entire Christian world. So, reading the year from an old coin based on the evolution of letters and symbols bring us to only one conclusion, and that is the date of 660 years. Like the year 650. So, 75 years from Jesus. Don't forget that the entire East pronounces the name Jesus with the English letter E, and writes it as on the coin with the letter I. 760 years from Jesus. I don't know what you think, but I have no other rational explanation studying the official evolution of letters and symbols. I can only conclude that this is 760 years from Jesus. Or here's 60 years from Jesus. Now, let's connect the reset of time, the advent of Jesus, and relevant biblical prophecies. Most cultures' historical records begin around the 8th or 9th century, with modern states slowly forming from the 12th century onwards. According to the official narrative, we should believe that from the appearance of Christ to the spread of Christianity, an incredible 1,000 years have passed. Does that sound realistic to you? Or does it sound more realistic, century and a half? From the appearance of Christ to the Crusades? Historical data confirm that Christ really lived, and considering that he changed the world in such a way that all the literate people of that time sat down to write and translate the New Testament, it is much more likely that it all happened in 150 years, rather than after 1,000 years. Simply, the narrative of so many years after Christ is not reasonable. The first 800 years after Christ seemingly yielded little progress. The explanation lies in Rome's gradual collapse and Christianity's spread, but 800 years of inactivity seems improbable. If babies were born in the early 8th century, these 800 years would represent nearly 50 generations of silence for creative humans. However, if Christ's appearance and Rome's fall occurred swiftly within about 100 years, a more logical timeline emerges. My generation, just 25 years ago, believed in America's enduring dominance. Yet, in a mere 25 years, the world has shifted towards multipolarity, with China and Russia rising as powers. Change happens rapidly. Delving deeper, the Bible foretells Christ's millennium or kingdom, lasting 1,000 years. It commences with Satan's defeat and imprisonment for 1,000 years, a period also known as the Great Tribulation, culminating in the Antichrist defeat. Preterism, a Christian belief, posits that we already inhabit the age of prophecy. This is supported by the overthrow of Emperor Nero's dynasty, potentially symbolizing Satan's defeat. Subsequently, those who perished alongside Christ during the Great Tribulation were resurrected as angels or saints, while newborns received a chance to embrace Christ's rule. However, a second resurrection is also mentioned, following Christ's 1,000-year reign, when Satan is loosed for a little season. This unspecified period, relative to 1,000 years, could span hundreds of years, aligning with the modern era's mass destruction and deaths resulting from military advancements after the 19th century, when Christ's kingdom ends for a little season. My research involves inquiring about people's ancestral memories from the early 19th century. Most possess scant knowledge beyond the 4th generation, even less about the 5th, and virtually none about the 6th. This is peculiar, considering this period marks the expansion of the modern age. Science emerges seemingly out of nowhere, wars become disproportionately bloodier, and people largely lack ancestral connections to this time. To fulfill the biblical prophecy that the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. Another resurrection is necessary if we believe this period has ended. This necessitates resurrecting those who didn't live during Christ's kingdom, specifically around the 19th century. Remarkably, the modern age's hallmark is a massive population increase. Early photographs depict countless infants and children laboring in factories, their sizes clearly mismatched. There are also images of hospitals filled with infant incubators. How can this be explained, except by someone randomly birthing numerous children, then abandoning them in hospitals? It's strange. One photo shows a massive crowd in an empty field entering a futuristic-looking building. When we consider Satan's mark of the beast, signifying acceptance of his rule through a mark on the hand or forehead, it's plausible that we currently live in the post-Christ kingdom period, which began in the 19th century and is nearing the 200-year mark of Satan being loosed. Honestly, I no longer dismiss anything. The positive aspect is that Satan's rule is ending, ushering in a new age of Christ and a golden era for humanity. Despite my doubts, I yearn for this to be true.